Welcome to the traditional versus modern series, where over the next 4 episodes, all we're going to speak about is sales roles in 2 different industries. On each episode, we're going to run through a certain topic and we're going to run through the differences between both industries. One industry being traditional sales roles, such as recruitment, tech sales, software sales, insurance, brokering, business development, car sales, and so on. And the other industry being the online education industry, with sales roles such as remote high-ticket closing. Purely just so you can get an understanding as someone who is probably already working in sales or someone who's looking to get into sales as to really what is the best industry for you to put your skill set of sales into. Not only so you can make the commission that you want, but also live the life that you actually want. But before anything else, just so you understand that the information in this episode and the episodes to come are actually valid and reputable. For those that don't know, my name is Connor Martin, and for just under 3 years, I worked a corporate sales role up in London for the UK's leading commercial office fit-out company. I started out as an SDR, cold caller, whatever you want to call it. I was then promoted to a closer or an account executive, again, whatever you want to call it. We were selling projects anywhere between £500,000 to £5 million in deal value. Now, in the space of me being there for just under 3 years, I closed 10 million in gross profit, selling to some of the largest corporate B2B accounts, predominantly to CEOs, COOs, and CFOs. So I did it. The cold calling, the prospecting, the outbound dialing. I did the corporate sales role at quite a high level, and I did it for just under 3 years. I then transitioned into remote high-ticket sales, where in my first full month transitioning into remote high-ticket sales, I cleared $21,878 in straight commissions. And then for 2.5 years straight, I was the top performing sales rep for some of the largest coaching businesses in the online education industry, and I was cash collecting $150,000 to $250,000 in cash collected deals month after month, and making 10 to 15% commission on that on a consistent basis, being the top performing sales rep. Now, that just gives you an understanding that I did corporate sales at quite a high level, and I also did remote high ticket sales at quite a high level. And you'll see throughout these episodes, proof, receipts, bank transactions, all that sort of stuff to back up what I've just said there. But firstly, just wanted to mention that before we run through the episode, so you know it's actually coming from someone who had a very good experience in corporate sales and a very good experience in remote high ticket sales, so I can give you a non-biased understanding as ultimately what is the best industry to sell in if you want to make the most commission, but you also want to live a great life at the same time. So without further ado, let's dive into the first episode. And what we're going to be running through is the 10,000 per month roadmap between the 2 different industries. Let's get into it. Welcome to the first episode of the traditional versus modern series, where in this episode, what we're going to run through is the 10,000 per month roadmap, where I'm going to break down what it looks like to make 10,000 per month and the roadmap if you were to sell in a traditional sales industry versus what the roadmap to making 10,000 in a single month would look like if you were to do so in a modern sales industry. So before getting into anything else, just so everyone understands what a traditional sales industry is and the sales roles within them, I'm talking about car sales, tech sales, software sales, recruitment, business development, door-to-door, insurance, brokering, and real estate. So those are examples of the sales roles within traditional sales industries. Now, modern sales industries, I'm talking about online education, digital products, mentorships, consulting, coaching, marketing services, financial services, and masterminds. Okay? Now, let's run through the roadmap for a traditional sales industry and what it looks like getting to 10,000 a month. So to begin with, an entry traditional sales role, to give you an understanding of the roadmap, because obviously these things don't happen overnight. There is very much a progression and a certain amount of roles and positions and amount of work that you need to do in order to get to a point of making 10,000 in a single month, especially if you're trying to do it in a traditional sales industry. So to begin with, in your first 1 to 2 years, if you're doing this in the traditional sales industry, you're looking at starting out as a sales associate, sales representative, business development, SDR, BDM, recruitment consultant, property consultant, or junior broker. That's where I started out as an SDR, and you'll normally be in this position like for your first 1 to 2 years if you're going down the route of trying to sell in traditional sales industries. Now, in terms of what that looks like from an earning potential, because obviously we're talking about 10,000 per month, and bearing in mind, I'm talking about 10,000 per month after tax. I'm not talking about pre-tax. No one cares about pre-tax, okay? No one should speak about pre-tax. It is fugazi. It does not exist. It's not real, Okay, it's not real whatsoever. You don't pay for your mortgage with pre-tax, your holidays, your car, so don't talk about it. It's not real. It's just a thing for ego, for people in corporate to think they're doing well when in reality you're not. So we're talking about post-tax here, all right? What you put in your pocket. So, OTEs, this is pre-tax though. This is pre-tax. We'll get on to post-tax in just a second though. So OTEs in your first 1 to 2 years, okay, your first 1 to 2 years are £30,000 per year, pre-tax, to £50,000 pre-tax per year. I think I was on around that. I think my starting salary was, I think it was 28,000. I got promoted within the first 6 weeks. I broke the company record going from a SDR, lead generator is what they called it, to a strike caller. I broke the company record. I remember very clearly the first question I asked to the guy who was hiring was, what is the quickest someone's gone from lead generator to strike caller? And he pointed at the guy, and I remember looking at the guy, and I was like, I'm fucking coming for you, buddy. I'm coming for you. And everyone praised him in the office. Like, he's this big dog. Like, oh, yeah, everyone loves him. And then I remember when I did it in 6 weeks, and there was this weird aura in the office. It was almost like they hated me. It was like, yeah, it's weird, and it just goes to show in the corporate environment, not a lot of people want you to do well, right? And when you're young, and I think I was 18 at the time, they were, they weren't happy with it. They wanted to make me feel uncomfortable, but that's what it is. But yeah, 30 to 50, and then obviously I got a pay rise to, I think it was 40 to 45,000. That was my base, and then obviously a commission. But yeah, when you're starting out, your first 1 to 2 years, you're looking at 30,000 to 50,000 per year. Now, more importantly, what people don't understand, that equates to £2,093 to £3,293 after tax. So this is the issue, right? Hopefully anyone who's in sales understands this. If you're like trying to get into a traditional sales industry role, like understand that 30 to 50K sounds good, right? That's what you take home. That's what's in your back pocket. And I'm sure you probably want to live a life. You want to go on holidays. You want to have a nice car. You want to have a nice... That's what you're looking at the first 1 to 2 years. Okay? And that's, 50 is good. 50 is good, right? 50 is good. Like, you're more looking at 40. So 2,000 to 3,200, your first 1 to 2 years, that is what you are looking at. Okay? Now, if we move into more senior traditional sales roles, okay? So this will normally happen 3 years in, 4 years in, 5 years in. Of course, there's a few anomalies. For example, I was promoted very quickly based on my performance, even though still I arguably should have been promoted even further, but that's another story. You can obviously be promoted quicker, but as a rule of thumb, for someone who's just going through the motion, and to be fair, someone who's actually like doing well, this is typically what you're looking at. After 3 to 5 years, account executive, account manager, business development exec, SDR, senior recruitment consultant, property consultant, and a broker. That's what you're looking. So 3 to 5 years. So let's say you start at 20 years old. Let's just use that for this video. You start at 20 years old. At 23 to 25 years old, you're looking at being within this sales role, given you've done very well in the first 1, 2, 3 years. So what that looks like from an OTE standpoint, on target earnings, 60,000 per year pre-tax to 130,000 pre-tax per year. Now, 130,000 would be more towards year 4, year 5. I have seen people obviously do 150,000, but if we're talking about general, we're talking about average, because I think that's fair. Let's not talk about like top performers. Let's not talk about bottom. Let's just talk about average to keep it fair all around. This is what you're looking at. However, and this is something I realized because I was in my corporate sales role for 2.5 years, just under 3 years. What I realized, and I realized this big time, as I started getting to that higher tier tax bracket and started getting a 60K a year base and my commissions were going over the 6-figure mark, this is what happens. So yeah, you're doing 60K a year, but you're only left with 3.7 a month. Yeah, you're doing 130 a year, but you're only left with 6.7 a month. And that's at 25 years old, let's say, for example. Okay, if we're using what we're using. At 25 years old, may have mortgage, may have car payments, may have rent, expenses, holidays, girlfriend, all of these things, 6.7. I'm sure you know how quickly that goes. Same with 3.7 as well, okay? And that is, after 3 to 5 years, getting to this point, okay? These are based off real stats. As you said, I'm someone that's been there and done it, okay? So I actually know these for proof, and I'll show you in a second. Now, we get to more senior traditional sales roles, okay? More senior traditional sales roles. You're looking at a sales director. Spell check. You're looking at account manager. You're looking at head of business development, account director, head of sales, VP of sales, senior broker. Now, this is typically like 6 to 20 years. And the reason I know this is because a lot of people that I used to work with in my old corporate sales role were like 30, 35, 40, 45 years old. And I had a lot of friends that used to be in tech sales, software sales, and recruitment. And I know this for a fact. And also a lot of like people that I grew up with, their dads and whatnot were in these roles, for example. And I would get an understanding in terms of what they were making. So this is verified. And this is realistically what you're looking at the most senior traditional sales role. So the most senior people within the company that I was in and other companies such as recruitment, tech sales, software sales, if you're looking at being at this point, which is going to probably take anywhere from 6 to 20 years, it could take 6 years, it could take 8, 10, 15, 20, who knows? How long's a piece of string? When you're in the corporate environment, it's not paid for performance. It's paid based on, can we promote someone and do they make sense? And have they got grey hair yet? Are they old enough? And all this bullshit. But you're looking at around 120,000 a year to 300,000 a year. 300,000 a year is quite high. You're looking at around that maybe towards the 15-year to 20-year mark. There was someone in my corporate sales role who was doing 250,000 per year, and he was 36 years old. And I'll get, that may sound to some people good, but in reality, when you look at what you keep after tax with kids, he had 2 kids, he had a quite a large mortgage, car payments for him and his wife, you're left with nothing. Absolutely nothing. So 120,000 a year to 300,000, and that's after 6 to 20 years. Now, after tax, you're left with this. So yeah, you've got 120,000 a year, that goes down to 6.3K a month. Oh, you've got 300 grand a year. Well, that goes down to 14.2 grand is what you keep after tax. Okay. So that is what it looks like. So this is, let's just recap on that, guys. So everyone's got an understanding of that. So your first 1 to 2 years. So let's say 20 years old to 22 years old, you're looking at making around 2,500 to 3,000 a month. You then get to 23 to 25 years old. You're looking at around 4,000 to 5,000 per month at 23 to 25 years old. You then get to around 28 to 35 years old. You're looking at around 6,500 to 8,000 pounds from 28 to 35 years old. 6,000 to 8,500 pounds and that is given you actually progress. That is given you put in the reps. Like a lot of people I know are 35 years old. They're an account exec. They're an account manager. They're an SDR. Like it takes a lot to get to this point. A sales director, account manager, head of sales, VP of sales. That's a very rare position to get to. Most people will end up here. So realistically, if we're looking at it, 30, 35 years old, you're looking at 3,500 to 6,000 a month mark at 30, 35, 40 years old. Okay, based off data and proof. Now, let's move into the 10,000 per month roadmap to entry modern day sales roles. So, first year would be a remote high ticket closer. The reason why there are no other sales positions here is that is the only position. There is no hierarchy, realistically. You are paid for your performance, not how old you are, not if you've got grey hair or not if you suck up to your boss. You're paid for your performance. So that is your position, a remote high ticket closer. And that's it. Straight away, you can walk in. If you have the skill set, if you've gone through coaching and training and you're good enough, you can walk in and land a role as a remote high ticket closer. You don't have to wait 15, 20, 50 years. You walk in as a remote high ticket closer. Now, realistically, the types of remote high ticket closing roles you're going to be getting, if it's your first one, given you've gone through coaching and training and you're actually good enough, because corporate sales and remote high ticket closing, they're a different sales process, of course, obviously. But typically you're looking at OTs anywhere between £100,000 to £150,000 per year in on-target earnings. And that would be your first role within an entry modern day sales role. What that looks like after tax, and I want to answer what you're thinking right now in just a second, is £10,000 per month and £12,500 per month. So that £10,000 per month roadmap would and could be broken within a 6 to 12 month period of you transitioning into it. Now, the reason why you're thinking, hang on, what's happening there with the tax? Well, you're self-employed. As a remote high ticket closer, you are not an employee. You are a contractor. So you can set up a limited company and operate as that, and you can be creative with your tax, meaning you're not going to be paying 45% tax if you're smart about it. And also, because you're 100% remote, in remote high ticket closing, you can move abroad. You can go to Dubai, you can go to Bali, Thailand, to Cyprus, to the Bahamas, to the Cayman Islands, to these places that have very low tax brackets, and you can keep a lot of it. Now, I'm not going to get into that in this video. That's a separate topic. We're talking about just the 10,000 a month income, but just wanted to share that. So that is why the income take home is that, because you can keep a lot of what you make. Okay, so that's what you're looking at in the first 6 to 12 months. Now, 1 to 2 year mark. So you've been in remote high ticket closing for 1 to 2 years. I was in it for 2.5 years, and I'll get onto the numbers that I did and the proof in just a second before, just so you know that this is actually verified and I'm not just saying this for fun.
So after your first year, so your first to second year in remote high ticket closing, the types of roles you can start to get because you've proven yourself, you're good enough. People know you in the market. Remote high ticket closing is a bit like football, and playing football academy is the way that I used to play football academy, and I was in remote closing. When you get really good at football and you're scoring a lot of goals for your county or for another academy, people know who you are. People start offering you trials because you're good enough. And obviously that doesn't happen in the corporate world really. Well, maybe if you get a recruiter, but they offer you some crappy little 80 grand a year corporate sales role. It's really exciting in remote closing because you actually get it to the point, they're going to start offering you some really, really, really nice on-target earning roles. So you can look at £150,000 per year to £250,000 per year roles once you got to that point. Given you've performed, of course, but look, even if you don't perform, you're still looking at that. Okay, you still have to be good, of course, because it's paid for performance, but I'm talking averages here, based on my experience. So 150 and that leaves you 12,500 to 20,000 per month. So 12.5 to 20,000 pounds per month. And again, you're self-employed, so you can keep most of that. Now, what happens then? Because this is a big thing that I see in the space. It's like, look, I've been in remote high ticket closing, I've done it, and look, what you've done there in literally 2 years, I mean, you most likely won't even get there in a traditional sales role. In fact, it will probably be near enough impossible unless you're like a partner of a company which is massive, like HubSpot or Snowflake or Google or someone like that, you know? So realistically, that's what you're looking at, okay? You're looking at that. So that's your first 2 years. Now, again, that's based off of me, that's based off of my experience and also closers that I've worked with. Them actually performing and doing well after a 1 to 2 year mark, they are around the 12, 15, 20,000 pound per month mark. But then the question becomes, what do you do next? What happens after closing? Can you get to 30, 40, 50, 60,000 per month closing? Yes, of course you can. And I'll run you through that in just a second. So this is the first 1 to 2 years within a modern day sales role. So after that point, 2 to 4 years down the line, these are the most senior modern sales roles. Okay, these are the most senior. So after 2 to 4 years of doing closing and doing 10, 12, 15, 20, 25,000 a month consistently, you've got a few different options. You can stay being a remote high ticket closer and you can very much get to 30, 40, 50, 60,000 pounds per month. I know many people that got to that point. I personally didn't closing myself, but I know many people that did. Or you can become a sales manager where now for these online education companies, these coaching businesses, you are managing the sales team. You're no longer taking calls, but you're normally taking 5% commission off the total cash collected of the company. So rather than closing £200,000 and taking 10% as a closer per month, so you make £20,000, now the company may do, let's say, for example, £500,000, the total sales team. There may be 5 sales reps doing 100,000 each. So the company's done 500,000, but you get 5% of the 500,000 because you're managing the entire team. So you've made 25,000 per month in a single month, but you're not taking any calls. So you're pretty much realistically working 4 to 6 hours. Of course, closing, you're working way more hours, but as a manager, you've got that time back, you've got that leverage. Or you can be a fractional head of sales. Again, I know tons of people who do that as well. What that means is you come into multiple businesses and you manage their sales team. So you take 5% there, 5% there, 5% there. I mean, if you've got 3 clients or 3 partners, £25,000 per a pop, that is literally £75,000 that you're making from fractional head of sales. Or you can run a sales agency. That's exactly what I do at Sales Leaders, my separate business, where we effectively partner with online education companies in the B2C and B2B space that are looking to scale to 250,000, $500,000, $1 million to $3 million a month. And I'll take over their entire sales operations, hire, train and manage their entire sales team. And of course, I've got a marketing partner as well who deals with the operations, the funnels, the back end, the copywriting. So we basically partner with these companies and help them scale. You can also do that and you can work with 5, 10 partners, whatever your capacity is. And this can very much allow you to get to 75, 100,000 pounds per month in income and even more in profit. And then you can be a head of sales. So you can just be working for one company, but you can be the head of sales, and you may have a partnership model. For example, a great example of this is someone called David Dre. David Dre is someone within the sales space. I don't really look at a lot of people and think they're fantastic and great, but he is one person that I look at and think, he's fantastic, he's great, and he knows exactly when it comes to sales, from a corporate sales angle, from a remote closing, from just a sales as a whole. Really, really admire the way that he sells, and I think from his side of things, it's great. But he was head of sales for consulting.com, Sam Ovens. Sam Ovens had one of the biggest online education companies, within the industry. It was doing about 30 million a year in revenue, not in profit, but it was doing 30 million a year in revenue. And he was a head of sales, and he had a partnership model where he had equity within the business, doing around 75,000 in commissions per month because he had that partnership equity model. Okay, so that's realistically what it could look like from a modern, most senior modern day sales roles. And this is the on-target earnings in terms of what it looks like. Realistically, ranging anywhere from 300,000 a year to 1 million a year plus. When you make the pivot into this specific type of roles, you progress through remote closing, sales manager, fractional head of sales, sales agency, or head of sales. Or you can just, as I said, you can just keep being a remote closer and you can still very much stay at the 30, 40, 50,000 pound per month mark. So after a 2 to 4 year period, that is what you can look at when it comes to modern senior sales roles, okay, over 2 to 4 years. Now, if we go back there and we have a look at sort of 2 to 4 year mark in traditional sales roles, that's what you're looking at. Okay, do you know why? Because you're paid for performance here. In a modern day sales role, you are paid for your performance. You're not paid on your time or how long you're in the company. You're paid for your performance. The better you are, the more you make. It's like in football. If you're shit, you're never making it in the first team. If you're good, you're in the first team and you'll make loads of money. Like, that's how life should be, but that's what it is. So that is an honest understanding of a 10,000 a month roadmap, traditional sales industries, modern sales industries. And just quickly, just so you guys have an understanding, like this, again, I want to proof over promises. One thing I'm very big on is bank transactions and statements. I get it online. A lot of people say, oh, is it a scam? Is it real? Like, look, my role and my responsibility, and anyone watching this, I'm going to show you undeniable proof so you have no argument to stand on that this is real and it's fucking happening, okay? Because this is the video that I saw and it lit a fire up my ass to go, shit, like I'm losing so much money. Like, what am I doing? Working for 3, 4, 5, 6 grand a month in this shitty corporate sales job. I'm never going to get where I want to be. So, as you can see here, this is taken from when I was working that corporate sales job. After my first year, this was my average month, doing around £4,200 per month, roughly. So that was after a full year. And bear in mind, just so you know, like that is actually very, very good. In the industry of corporate sales and like recruitment, like your first year, your average on a month-to-month basis being that is very good. And the reason why it was that, I was busting my ass. I was doing like so many hours. I was staying till 6 and 7 every night, 5 days a week. I wouldn't go out on Thursdays and Fridays in London. I was busting my ass. Like, so, I closed so many deals. I did training. I did so much. And after 1 year, it was just 4,200 a month. And I was like doing everything. And after 2 years, this was one of my biggest commissions that was paid out. And bear in mind, I worked on this deal for a year. I must have had hundreds of touch points with the clients, hundreds of emails sent. I would have spent tens of hours on this. And I was just paid out £8,487 on one of my biggest months. And I put all that work into it. And I was that good. And that's not me being egotistical. I was one of the best in the entire industry. And I was the best in the actual company itself. And then I transitioned into remote high ticket sales. And in my first full month, I did $21,878, which is around what, £16,500 in my first full month. No pipeline, nothing. I was just taking warm inbound video sales calls and closing them. Each call I was making anywhere between $500 to $1,500 per call that I closed. I wasn't spending tens of hours on a deal. I was spending about 45 minutes to an hour, and I did $21,800 in my first month. And there's some more examples of monthly commissions from me when I was remote closing. That was that £15,200 there. Okay, and that was done on a consistent basis as I was closing because I was paid for my performance rather than my time. So I'm going to leave you with this. This is the reality. In your traditional sales role, you're in a BMW. Compared to the average person, you're doing okay. You're doing well. Well done. Congratulations. And you can keep flexing your BMW. But what do you want to do? Do you want to put that skill set in a BMW and go at 150 miles per hour? Or do you want to go, do you know what? How about I put that skill set into a different vehicle? How about I put it into a Ferrari and I can go at 250 miles per hour and I can apply the same force to the accelerator, but I'm getting way more leverage when I make that transition into modern day sales role. So that's the first episode of traditional versus modern. I look forward to seeing you in the second episode. I'll see you then.